Hey everyone, I'm Connor and I'm back with another Pokemon deck profile. This time we're continuing with our post-rotation decks and what might be popular or strong going into the next format. And we're into September now, so the rotation has just happened, and if you are a newer player and you don't know what the rotation is, then there's plenty of information out there if you just have a quick search. But essentially we're losing a couple of sets, and you can only play with sets from Primal Clash onwards in the competitive tournaments that we have. So as you've seen in the title of this video, I'm going to be going over my Mega Scizor deck, and it's a very fun deck to play. It's fairly consistent, the build that I've got, but you may have some other ideas to improve the consistency because it's not always the best, but it's pretty good for what I've got at the moment. So starting off, the star of the show is going to be Mega Scizor. So of course we need the basic Scizor EX. His kind of stats and attacks aren't too overwhelming, but its second attack is quite notable. It's Gale Thrust for 2 energy. If it's on your bench and then becomes your active Pokemon, you're going to be able to do 110 damage, which is good just on its own, but also means that you can knock out a Shaman EX in one hit. So essentially we're playing this with things like Garbodor, so if you have that after you take a knockout with a floatstone on it, you can retreat into your Scizor EX and then hit for 110 damage, or Lysander or Shaman and knock that out. You won't be doing that all that often, but it's just nice to keep these things in mind. Moving on to our main attacker, Mega Scizor EX. He's a fairly big Pokemon. I mean, his HP isn't the best, but ultimately we don't care about any of that. We just care about our main attack. So it's called Iron Crusher, and it's for 2 metal energy. We're going to be doing 120 damage, which is a fair amount. We're going to be 2-hitting pretty much everything in the format, although it is somewhat low, and I'll get onto that in a little bit. But it's the effects of the attacks that we're mainly focused on, and that is you can either discard a stadium card in play or discard a special energy card attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is going to be extremely powerful against things like Mega Rayquaza. They have double colourless energy, which is a special energy. You can discard that. They're going to use Skyfield to improve the bench size that they have. You can discard that too. So there's a lot of options that you can play around with this deck. We do play our own stadium, so you can play a stadium and then discard your opponent's special energy, or play your stadium and then discard it if you wish, which I'll get onto as well. But like I mentioned, we're playing it with a Garbodor line, so we've got 2 Trubbish, of course, and then 2 Garbodor. So Garbotoxin shuts off all abilities from in play, in your hand, discard pile. It just shuts everything off as long as Garbodor has a tool attached to it. We're also playing 2 Shaman EX, so we can get these down early in the game just to get a couple of extra draws, improve our consistency. Very good card. I originally didn't have any in the deck, but I've managed to play around with it and add a couple in just to up my consistency. Then also playing 1 copy of Hoopa EX. Its Scoundrel Ring ability is fantastic during your first and second turn before you get Garbodor out, because our main attacker is a Pokemon EX and we have a lot of Pokemon EX, and we can go ahead and grab those, grab a Shaman and then play Garbodor and lock our abilities, because we don't need them anymore but our opponent might. That is it for the Pokemon. So going into the supporter cards, of course we're playing 4 Professor Sycamore. This is our main way of drawing cards. It's the most consistent way, and most of the time we're going to be playing our hand down to a very small size or even 0 cards. So Sycamore is the best card in order to draw cards. Moving on, these supporters might be a little bit strange, but I'm only playing one copy of N. Both players shuffle their hands into their decks and then draw cards for each prize card. We're only playing one because there's other cards that I had to cut, and N was unfortunately one of them. Since we are playing a lot of cards where we can just play them and then we can use Sycamore to draw stuff, N isn't all that valuable. However, we're playing one Giovanni scheme, so like I mentioned, 120 is good, but there are Pokemon that have 130 HP or 140, such as Yveltal and Yanmega. They have 130 and 140 respectively, so we have to hit an extra 10 or 20 damage. Giovanni scheme lets us do that, or if we're in need to draw a couple of extra cards, you can do that too, since Giovanni scheme has 2 effects. You know, you can draw until you have 5 cards. Also playing 2 copies of Lysander. Just bring up one of your opponent's Pokemon and hopefully knock it out if it's like a Shaman, or just to disrupt your opponent. This is very much a disruption style deck. Also 1 copy of Hex Maniac. Shuts off your opponent's abilities. You might think that you don't need it because you have Garbodor, but you very much do. If you come up against something like Vileplume, you're going to have to shut that off so that you can get your tool down and get Garbodor going. Also playing 1 Pokemon Ranger. Closes off all effects, which is very important as well against things like Giratina, so that you can play down your tools and get Garbodor going so that you can actually attack them, because that will shut off their ability and then their ability stops Megas from attacking, so you see how that works. But also just in general, things like Glaceon EX, we wouldn't be able to attack that otherwise, so we can shut off that effect of Crystal Ray and then knock them out in one hit since they're weak to metal. So going into the item cards that we have, of course we're going to be playing 4 VS Seekers still. We have a variety of different supporters, and we're going to be easily discarding them with Sycamores and Ultra Balls, so VS Seeker is going to be very strong to get any supporter back that we need. Playing only 3 copies of Ultra Ball, since generally we're going to search for a Hoopa in the early game, and that's going to set us up with whatever Pokemon we need, and then after that point you're just going to Ultra Ball for Garbodor. So having 4 Ultra Ball is a bit overkill, and I was able to cut 1 so that I had extra space for other cards. Moving on, we have 3 Trainer's Mail. Helps our consistency, means that we can look at the top 4 cards of our deck and get a Trainer's card that we find there, except Trainer's Mail of course. We have a whole bunch of trainer cards to choose from, so this is very useful indeed. As you can see, we're playing 4 copies of Crushing Hammer. So, you know, Mega Scizor, you get to discard Special Energy or Stadium, so we're going to be really disrupting our opponent with Crushing Hammers. Flip a coin of heads, discard an energy, and then even further disruption, 2 Enhanced Hammers. I mean, you might think that you don't need Enhanced Hammer because Mega Scizor does that job, but if your opponent starts stacking energy onto their bench, then you're going to need a way to discard that energy as well and disrupt them, so Enhanced Hammer does that for you. And also, if your opponent stacks up multiple special energy, so say they have like 2 special energy on their active Pokemon, and you can discard them both if you play an Enhanced Hammer and then use Mega Scizor to discard the other one. To help with consistency as well, we have 3 Mega Turbo. You know, you can Ultra Ball, discard a couple of Metal Energy, and then go ahead and use Mega Turbo so that you attach an energy, and then Mega Turbo really helps with the speed of the deck because the attack cost of Mega Scizor is only 2, so it's very useful to have Mega Turbos in there, and I would highly recommend using them if you're going to play with this deck and play around with the cards in it. Playing 1 Super Rod just to get back Pokemon, pretty standard. You can get back energy as well. 1 Escape Rope, this is more if you have something in the active that you don't want there, like a Hoopa or It also counts as a free Lysander in the form of an item, although your opponent gets to choose, but it forces up something that your opponent might not otherwise want in their active. And one Professor's Letter, just to search out energy that we can then discard or attach. And for tools, we have 3 Mega Scizor Spirit Links, just so that we can evolve without ending our turn, and 2 Float Stones for our Garbodors. So going into stadiums, we're only playing the one stadium, but we're playing 3 copies of it, and that is Parallel City. So 2 sides of this. Parallel City, you can either put your bench or your opponent's bench down so they have 3 Pokemon at their maximum rather than 5. So if early game you set up, you play your Hippos, play your Shamans, you can Parallel City facing yourself so that you can discard your Hippos and Shamans so that they are no longer targets for your opponent to Lysander. Or you can put it facing your opponent, so against Mega Rayquaza, you really squash down their bench and make it difficult for them to get damage out. The other side, it reduces the damage done by Pokemon that are grass, fire and water, reduces that damage by 20. So any of those decks, it's going to be harder for them to knock you out, and it's just useful to know. But ultimately we're focused on the bench reduction side because it's very useful and very disruptive as well. And even if we do it on ourselves, we can play Mega Scizor to get rid of it. So even if we're left with like Mega Scizor in the active and we use it, we can have Garbodor and then 2 more Mega Scizors, and then we can go ahead, discard it, and then next turn play it down again like another copy and have that other side facing them. So our opponent has 3 bench. But going on to energy, we're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 metal energy. 7 just because it's consistent. You can attach 1 onto a Shaman to retreat it. The Scizors and Mega Scizors only have a 2 attack cost, so you're going to be able to attach 2. If you get all 3 of them out, that's 6 energy. You don't really need more than 7 since you've got your Mega Turbos, you can attach 1 each turn. It's a very consistent number I've found. Like I mentioned, you're going to be playing out your hand with your Crushing Hammers and Trainer's Mails, Professor's Letter, everything. You're going to be playing out your hand most of the time, so Sycamore is not going to hurt you if you discard a couple of things. And that's why you don't really need a huge amount of N. And we've got Giovanni's Scheme as well if you need to draw cards. Overall, the matchups are very strong across the board. Of course, you're going to have a hard time against fire because you're weak to fire. If it's a Volcanion based deck, then hopefully you can slow them down a little bit with Garbodor, but ultimately it's going to be an auto loss just because of your weakness. But other than that, your matchups are going to be fairly in your favour. It's going to be across the board a very disruptive deck against any opponent. Also against Mega Mewtwo you have resistance to Psychic, so they're going to be stacking up a lot of energy, but you're also going to be able to discard some of that energy with your hammers and your attack discarding special energy. So overall, very disruptive, but also hard hitting, which you don't usually see very often. You usually see hard hitting decks that hit for huge numbers, or a disruptive deck that maybe mills your opponent as well. You don't really see them both meshed together like this. That's why I really enjoy this deck. I'm very focused on getting the consistency up, so if you have any other ideas or suggestions to add to the deck, I'm very open to hear them, and if I have an updated version in a couple months time, I'll be sure to post that for you. But if you enjoyed this deck profile, be sure to hit the like button, leave any comments and suggestions you have down below in the comments section, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one in the future, and make sure that you don't miss out. And I'll see you in the next video.